I just figured we just got into this. I didn't even read everybody the state. I already have it pulled up here. So if you don't know what Goose and I are talking about, if you have not been around, there was a report that came out from Jake Fisher today of Yahoo Sports. I'll read it. Wishful executives will keep their eyes peeled on Portland and Damian Lillard, but it's the Chicago Bulls who have started contacting teams, quietly gauging the trade interest in Zach LaVine. League sources told Yahoo Sports. It remains to be seen just how willing Chicago is to part ways with LaVine, or if it receives a offer for his services. LaVine has 4 seasons remaining on his 5-year deal. So they're holding a steep valuation for LaVine is basically what this report says. The trade you just named off with New Orleans. No one's even if Zion plays 40 games, no one's taking 77 to 80 games of Zach LaVine over 40 games of Zion Williamson. They won't. They just won't. I don't know his fit with Damian Lillard. I don't know what that backcourt looks like.
I think it's comparable to your Dame CJ experiment that you moved
and
out.
That failed already.
Yeah.
So,
that's the tricky thing with Portland here is I feel that they should keep their third, and maybe it depends on who's the board. If the Hornets take Scoot and just take the best available, and it's Brandon Miller, maybe they debate, moving out of it. But for Portland, I look at the roster, and they have almost like every young wing prospect from recent drafts in the lottery on their roster. They've got Cam Reddish, they've got Kevin Knox, they've got Naz Reid, they had Matisse Thybulle. Like outside of
they have Nazir Little too.
Yeah, they got Naz Little.
Remember him in North Carolina? A lot of people thought he was going to be.
He's on a good contract right now. He is like $6 to $8 million on a 2 or 3 year deal.
Yeah.
So I look at the Portland roster and I almost think that like as a franchise you have to go, what more can we give this guy that actually makes us a championship contender? They completely missed the playoffs and the play-in, partially by design, towards the end of the season there. But what pieces do you need to legitimately have a contender with Dame on your roster? Or are you better with the Shaedon Sharpe, with all these young wing prospects that you can re-sign and kind of see which one works out for you while grabbing a Scoot Henderson or a Brandon Miller?
That's 100% what you're bringing up right now is the route that Portland should go. They shouldn't blow it up and trade the third pick to keep Dame there. Yes, Dame is a star. He is a star player, but he's 31 years old and he's a guard. It's going to start breaking down here eventually. It's within the next 3 years. I'm just saying, if you have to be sure whatever you trade, you get the perfect complementary piece back to him so you win in those years because you're letting guys go with high upside. And, think about it. Even if Sharpe or Simons is a good young player.
Simons is a good young player, and then you have teams like the Rockets that are reportedly trying to shop that fourth. And they're trying to aggressively improve their roster. Damian Lillard maybe gets you the 4th overall pick, some young assets from the Rockets, and then you're picking 3 and 4. You already have, Sharpe and a couple of other decent young players to kind of build with and see how this plays out. So it shocks me that Portland is reported to be leaning heavier towards moving that 3 to get Dame help. And
you know why it shocks you? Because it's loyalty that you haven't seen in a franchise since we were kids.
And for me, I don't know about you, but if Scoot Henderson is on the board at number 3, there's not a combination of players, future picks, Patrick Williams, whoever the hell they want. They could have all 5 positive assets that we have, which is LaVine, Caruso, Pat, DeMar, and Vooch. They could have all of them. Make the money work. Send them their protection back. Get me Scoot Henderson. And obviously we already pretty much put it to bed because if Zion's available, Scoot ain't going to be there. And I don't know if I feel strong enough about Brandon Miller to do an all-in scenario as I would be with Scoot. So it gets conflicting there. But then you think about it, and what legitimately can the Bulls get back for LaVine?
That's $1 million question here.
Is RJ Barrett?
What's he worth? Because at the trade deadline, if you remember,
RJ Barrett wasn't even rumored to be included in that deal.
No, but it was Quentin Grimes. They wouldn't part with Quentin Grimes though. Okay, that was what it was. They wouldn't part with Quentin Grimes. So it was something like a couple first round picks is what. Oh, I just got an ESPN notification.
Zach LaVine has been traded.
Yeah, right. But they wouldn't part with Quentin Grimes, but there was a couple of first round picks in there, I think. listen, he balled out from the trade deadline All-Star break on. Like he improved on the rough start to his season and all that. So it had to raise. I just don't know what it is. But I was so funny. I went on Twitter today. There was like a lot of people are like, oh my God, like y'all turned on Zach. It's like, no, dude, we didn't fucking. I think Zach LaVine is a fine player. I think Zach LaVine is a decent player. Zach LaVine got a 5-year, $215 million contract because the Bulls were in a weird spot. And I saw somebody, I can't remember who put this on Twitter, but they put on there, yeah, Zach LaVine can be the second best player on a championship team if his teammates are Luka and it was like named like Giannis and Embiid, I think it was, or Jokic. Well, no shit. If you have fucking,
yeah, if like, you got a top 5 player, anybody can win a championship.
Yeah, if you got a top 5 player,
you don't even need Zach LaVine if you have a top 5 player.
I mean, what the fuck are we talking about here? Like, he's a good, fine player. What am I more excited about right now? A fucking full-on rebuild, because I don't see this team win.
And if the Bulls hadn't backed themselves so far into this corner to where they really have no legitimate ways to put a proper roster around Zach.
That's what I mean. They're screwed.
Makes him, between the Lonzo injury, taking, about a fifth of their cap, 20%. Around that kind of percentage of your cap's allotted to a guy that isn't going to play next year, or you're at least going into the season assuming he isn't going to be able to play next year. You don't have many firsts that you can trade because of the Stepien rule. Despite that, you've already fulfilled your trade to Orlando. You still owe a pick to Sacramento. We obviously have our pick next year. So now is the time, if you're going to do this, to back yourself out of this corner. And rebuild. It's a lot easier to sell the future than it is to sell continuity with this continued roster. There's posts on Twitter. The Bulls, in terms of their big 3, played more minutes together all year than just about every big 3 in the league, and they were a sub-500 team. So you can't blame health. Obviously, the Lonzo aspect of that is health-related. But in terms of the big 3, the guys that you heavily invested in, they simply do not work together.
No, they don't. And you're in the perfect spot here because, like, again, what you just brought up, you traded your picks and all these freaking moves that you made. Right now, you have the prime opportunity I don't know if it's for sure, but if there's interest in DeMar DeRozan, which you remember at the trade deadline, there was teams saying they were interested in DeMar DeRozan at the trade deadline. He's going to have some, I don't know how similar the interest will be, but it'll still be interest here going into the offseason. Zach raised his interest around the league and his value after the All-Star break when he turned it back on and showed that he could be not only a dynamic scorer, but an efficient one.
Well, and he did I can't say single-handedly because DeMar's daughter had a big hand in the Raptors playing
the Toronto game, right.
But Zach did, on the offensive end, carry that team to victory in a big moment. And obviously we had kind of the opposite effect in the Miami game. But 50-50, Zach did win you a winner-go-home game in the play-in. So I don't think if the Bulls hadn't mismanaged their assets so bad that we're even talking about trading LaVine, because he is a good enough building block for a team to build around. But with the hole that they put themselves, the place that they put themselves in, they just don't have a route to actually putting the team around him that he needs.